Hi everyone, Vanessa with Agency Shield here. Today we're going to go over how to upload a list into Ricochet. So first, start off in configuration, load a list. It'll bring you to this form that we can fill out. So first we're going to name our form, and I'm just going to do a test list today. So I'm going to put test list, and I'm going to put today's date next to it. We're putting today's date next to it because we're actually going to trick the system. So one of the most important parts of uploading a list is making sure that you're always backdating all the lists that you upload over 90 days. So if I pull up our little calendar here, I can go back a few months, choose a date. It doesn't have to be exact, just as long as you're over 91 days in the system. That way it will not get called more than your internet leads. You don't want the list getting called double than your internet leads are getting called. The second most important part about uploading a list is associating the correct vendor. You're usually going to be uploading lists into customer imported vendors. So customers is going to be for your book of business. You'll put it under customers vendor. That way we're going to know that these are customers. We're not going to call them through the auto dialer unless they are monoline policies, in which case we will do our cross sale. Now, everything else will pretty much be listed under imported. So anything else, if it's not your customer, put it under the imported vendor. That's going to make sure that it goes into your age data imported list campaign to be called on. If you don't put it under imported, those leads will not get called again. So for example, if you have some EverQuote leads you wanted to import into the system from an old system or something like that, then you don't want to choose this vendor here because these are only for internet leads that are coming through what's called a posting link or posting URL. If you put any list in one of these campaigns, or I'm sorry, not campaigns, but vendors, then those leads will never get called because the system will never see them. So you want to make sure you're choosing imported there if you want the leads to be called. Now, to keep track of all your leads, maybe you want to see the performance on them, you can actually add a campaign. So you could choose from the drop down or put in a new campaign. Let's say that these were old EverQuote leads from old system. You could track those by adding that campaign. You don't need to have a campaign though. That's just for tracking purposes if you wanted to use your performance report up in dashboard. So now that we've got that sorted out, we're going to move down to our advanced features in here. Now, I'm sure most of you want to avoid getting duplicates in the system. So to avoid duplicates, we're going to check the existing lead in the system by this field. And you get to choose what field from all these drop-down options. What I'm going to do is type in phone and select the first phone option that comes up, phone main. That's going to check all the leads by phone number, which phone number is going to be your best identifier for leads. We then want to also ignore lead age if you're checking for duplicates, because otherwise you're only going to be checking the last 24 hours worth of leads. By checking this box, you're telling the system to check the entire database, not just the last 24 hours. It checks the last 24 hours by default just for those vendors that are sending in leads into your system. So it's going to do a quick 24-hour check to make sure that they're not sending in 5 of the same lead at the same time. Now we can go ahead and select our file. And we're going to choose our test list here. Now, other options that we have in here, if you wanted to choose them, are going to be status. This is a really good one that we just added into the system, a new feature. You can status your entire list. So if you wanted to status your entire list as new leads, you could choose new. If you wanted to status an entire list as quoted leads, maybe you're going to be doing some quoted follow-ups, you could choose quoted. If you're choosing quoted, make sure to go back after you've uploaded your list to your lead management page and assign all the leads on the list as whoever quoted those leads so that they get to keep them. They have to be assigned if they're quoted. You could also upload a customer list for auto monoline. You're going to be able to do cross sale on those, or your customer bundle, no life and retirement. You could choose if you're putting it under the customer vendor, of course. But for this one, as an example, we're going to do new and import. All right, so now we've got our fields on our left side. These are the headers on your Excel. These fields are where we're going to tell Ricochet to put that information. So if I click in here, it's going to bring up important fields first, and important fields I want you to ignore. They're really not important at all. They're actually hidden fields. If you put anything under important fields, you're never going to see it again. So skip over important fields. Make sure you're going down to main contact info, and now you can choose those as your option. You could also start typing what you're looking for, and it'll pull up a drop down with less information. You can find that main contact spot there. And main contact is what the system's going to be using to send those texts or emails out. It's pulling this information, so make sure you map this out correctly. Anything you leave blank just will not import into the system. So if you leave it blank, maybe you forgot to delete something you didn't want, you could just leave it blank and it won't pull that into the system. Map everything you want to keep. Then we'll go ahead and click on import. That's going to import your list. We'll get a success message. We can view our import history report. We'll be able to see all the imported lists that we have in the system. So we see our imported test list here. It's in progress. It could take up to an hour to import a list depending on how long it is. And you might also get a little uh, note or a message when you upload a list if it's going to take longer than that. So if you're uploading a huge list, it's going to do that overnight, so not during business hours, because it's going to make the system slower. So you have it built in, it'll automatically tell you if that's a large list that it can't upload. A little more about list uploads is if you want to see where those lists are going, we could go to our dialer campaign. And in here, we're going to want to put everything under imported in our imported list for age data. And so we're going to be able to do that if your status is new and the vendor is imported, it'll get pulled into this campaign. If you upload a list and change the status to quoted, it's now going to get pulled into your quoted follow-up campaign. Remember, you have to make sure those leads are assigned, otherwise the system won't call it because of this little checkbox here. These are going to call on your quoted status. Say that you upload your customer list for monoline. It's going to get pulled into this dialer campaign where it's calling on these statuses, auto monoline or property monoline. If you upload a list for win-back and you don't have one of our new imported list win-back campaigns, it'll get pulled into this campaign because it's a status of a win-back. It's going to wait 120 days to call on that win-back, which is about 6 months from when you upload that list. So if you don't have one of our list win-back dialers, you can ask us for one, or you can pause your video and copy what I have in here. So basically it's just a copy of the age data campaign. We've got a win-back vendor, which is what you would actually upload the list to, and then make sure the status is win-back in here. That was not a very good example because the statuses weren't changed yet, but we'll go ahead and save that now. So that's done. So that's how your list uploads are going to work. They're going to get pulled into one of these dialers, and that's how they'll be called on in your CAMQ bucket.